Aaron, a number of NCAA men's basketball teams that qualified in this 68-team bracket did indeed get hosed, but we just need to start with if you felt like BYU got what they deserved, or if in any way, shape, or form you feel like the Cougars in blue got hosed by the selection committee with the 6th seed playing VCU in Denver.
Yeah, so one thing, guys, and I forget if we've talked about this before, I don't try to claim to be a bracketologist. There's so much nuance that goes into it. And like when you talk to the guys, and I'm sure you've had them on the show that actually do this stuff every single day, it really is like speaking a foreign language. So I try not to get too involved. I don't think BYU got hosed. I mean, if others are saying that, then I'm absolutely open to that conversation. I know there's some nuance involved because of the fact that obviously the school can't play on Sundays. I get all that. But I would actually look at it almost from the opposite perspective. I know we'll talk a little bit about VCU in a second, but, you are in Denver, home court advantage-ish setup, if you will. And I think you're playing a VCU team that, they won a bunch of games, and I don't want to discredit what they did in the A-10 because they're absolutely capable of beating BYU or anybody, really. But they're also a team that played Saturday and Sunday, got probably back to campus about 6, 7 at night on Sunday, now have to immediately fly out on Tuesday, do media availability on Wednesday, and play relatively early Thursday. So I actually think the way that things broke for BYU, it certainly could have been much worse. I think it sort of broke nicely. You're playing at altitude. You guys would know better than me what the fan support that's expected there this coming week. But it seems like it'll be great fan support. It seems like it's a short flight, and I actually think all things considered, things actually worked out relatively nicely for BYU.
We're feeling great. I'm saying BYU to the Sweet 16, frankly. But regarding the Cougar fans there, there's going to be, we think, anywhere from 4,000 to 6,000 fans in that gym. Awesome. They're going to pack it, if not more. Jimmer Fredette played in Denver in the first 2 rounds. He now lives there. His wife's from there. So there's good vibes with Denver and Jimmer. We're hoping BYU wins a first-round game for the first time since 2011. So you started to talk about VCU. How do you see this matchup playing out? Because VCU, again, the A-10 champs, a little bit of PTSD. BYU lost to the A-10 champs last year, but they feel like they're a different squad.
Yeah, no, BYU certainly a different squad. And I think the number one thing, and I know this is something that the three of us have been talking about since May and June of last year when this roster came together, is that BYU, listen, we're going to focus on whoever, but they got 4 guys that have played in an NCAA tournament. And to your guys' point, lost an opening round NCAA tournament game. And so, with a lot of these new coaches, I don't always mean to bring up the former BYU head coach that's now not at BYU anymore.
It's
but,
okay, right? It's
okay. Yeah. No, I know sometimes I think BYU it's worked out just fine for BYU, but he's a perfect example of new coach, virtually an entirely new coaching staff, an entirely new roster. So, yes, it might be Kevin Young's first NCAA tournament game. Yes, it might be Yegor Demon's first NCAA tournament game. But those, 4 guys that have been – those 4 guys that were with this team last year, they kind of have that pain. They've kind of tasted their own blood. So, I think that that is a variable that I don't want to say nobody's talking about, but I think on a national scale, you say, oh, Kevin Young, first NCAA tournament, how are they going to adjust this, that, the other thing. But like I said, 4 really important players, including one all Big 12 first-team member, was part of a team that, as you guys said, lost in a 6-11 game to open the NCAA tournament last year against the A-10 champs. And so I don't think they're taking anything lightly or for granted.
Aaron Torres, Fox Sports Radio, is on BYU Sports Nation. When you look at what BYU does best, Aaron, where could they specifically and maybe exploit a very efficient VCU team and efficient on offense and defense? Tough to find weaknesses, but where does BYU maybe have an advantage they could exploit?
Yeah, I think the teams are kind of similar. I understand that VCU probably doesn't statistically shoot the 3 ball as well as BYU does, but it's not for lack of having shooters. So I think that they've got guys, but I think the thing that stands out, you watch them, a lot of positional size, a lot of positional versatility. Another team, by the way, that has guys that have been there, Joe Bamisille's I'm not even being sarcastic. I think he's a 6th, maybe 7th year college player.
Jack Clark is the 7th year guy. Yeah.
So, yeah, Jack Clark played in an NCAA tournament the last couple of years at Clemson. I don't you always do these interviews and you feel good about a matchup for a certain team, but you don't want to undersell the other team because it's a single elimination tournament. But they're a veteran team. But I think that, again, there's no real way for me to put this other than the way that I'm about to put it. And I don't mean to make it sound like again, I'm going to say this just so it's abundantly clear. I'm not saying that VCU is not capable of beating BYU, because I don't want the smoke if something happens. But they play a lot like BYU, and BYU has better players. That's really what it is about to me. They're not super big. They're pretty athletic. They're on the wing. They're switchable. They shoot threes, not as well as BYU. And I think you talk to 10 experts on any game, they could talk you into one side or the other. But this is one I've really heard a lot of people make the argument for VCU in this game. And I just think with the way the two teams play, but then also the things that I mentioned, being in Denver, at altitude, short turnaround for VCU, I just think there's a lot of things that break in the favor of BYU going into this game.
And that's certainly the hope. BYU's been to the Sweet 16 or better just twice ever. It required Danny Ainge in '81 to the Elite Eight. It required Jimmer Fredette in 2011. We feel like this team's battle-tested. 15 Quad 1 games, 8 Quad 1 wins. Sorry, West Virginia, 6 wasn't good enough, I guess. That's another topic. This team feels different.
Are you guys getting in on that lawsuit? Have you been called in as a character witness
It's
yet?
our Big 12 brother, and we need them in the tourney. This BYU
West
team
Virginia cares so much it looks like their coach is going to leave. But that's another conversation for
right?
another day. So.
And we'll see if Ryan Odom goes to Virginia. That could be a distraction this week as well. This BYU team is getting picked by some people to go way far. We've heard Seth Davis, Andy Katz all say Elite Eight. We like how it shakes out if BYU beats VCU. Like, that's a winnable game against Wisconsin. A tough one, but a winnable game. Alabama, perhaps. Duke, perhaps. What are you thinking with what BYU could do should they get through the first round?
I said it the day the bracket came out. I did like the draw. I haven't heard what everybody else has said, but, listen, I think, again, Wisconsin, very similar team to what BYU does. Really good guard play. John Tonji's a very good player, an All-American caliber player. They shoot the three ball well. I don't think they're more talented than BYU. Now, they're like BYU, they're battle test. I think the big thing, and you guys just mentioned it, is, and I don't know all the history about BYU, and I can't say what happened, but you can't argue that this team has seen a lot of stuff over the course of the season. At Arizona, at Iowa State, wins there. Arizona at home was obviously an incredible game against an incredible team. Kansas at home, which, Torres knows a thing or two about. So, I just bring it up because, yeah, awesome. Still taste the cougar tail. But, no, I just think they are very battle-tested. And, I just think that I do think the bracket does shake up nicely. I mean, the thing, and I'll even ask you guys, I always thought the thing that this team was they're going to struggle with any team basically like Houston that's crazy physical, that doesn't let you get to your spots, that limits freedom of movement. And I'm not a ref, but, it's unbelievable. But, the teams that if you had asked me on Selection Sunday, I think Tennessee would have been a concern. I think St. John's would have been a concern. I think Houston would have been a concern if you somehow ended up in their bracket. Obviously, none of them are in the path. Now, you get to a Sweet 16. Alabama is really good, but they've struggled defensively all year. I love Nate Oates, but I still don't think he's figured out a rotation here as we're now in the middle of March.
Grant Nelson injury.
And then, obviously, if Grant Nelson, we don't know. I know Nate Oates has said he could be back, but we know how that works. Nobody's going to be 100% honest at this time of the year. So, listen, the deeper you get, the better teams you're going to play. I think you just want, favorable matchups. And that's what's so funny about this tournament is you guys know, every time you get to about mid to late February, oh, what do you think about my team? What do you think about how far can you? It's like you got to see a bracket because this whole thing is just predicated on matchups, and the wrong matchups, it doesn't matter who you are. You could be out early. You could be out in the first weekend. The right matchups, you can go far, and I like the matchups for BYU. So I haven't made any official picks yet, but I really like the matchups for the Cougars. And to your guys' point, they're battle-tested as well.
Aaron Torres on BYU Sports Nation. We'll finish with this true or false question. True or false, Aaron? One win in the NCAA tournament is enough to validate this BYU season.
I'll defer to you guys. I think it is. Listen, I think the last 2 weeks of Big 12 conference play, to me, validated it because, I remember in all seriousness, even being there in Provo for the Kansas game, and I remember saying after my show, and I think we talked about it last time I was on, but being around the staff, they kind of felt like, why not us? Why can't this be every game? Why can't we have 18,000 and the fans are great. So it's not they weren't criticizing the fans, but it's like, why can't we're in the Big 12? We have this great fan base. Why can't we be a consistent top 10, top 12, top 15 team, a consistent team, top 3, top 4 in the Big 12, a team that plays into late March, into early April? And that was the word and that was the term they were using. Why can't we be an April program here? An April program is obviously a team that's good enough to consistently at least be in the conversation to get to a Final Four. And, the thought process was, just because it hasn't been done doesn't mean it can't be done. And again, we've talked about it. We know about the incredible fan base. The Big 12 affiliation certainly helps. And so I only bring that up because I think the back half of the Big 12 schedule justified it, because, guys, I remember coming on with you, and after that Kansas game, it's all well and good, but it instantly becomes a conversation of, what's wrong with Kansas? Is there how bad are they? Did they miss in the portal? Has Bill Self lost his fastball? And then you go to Arizona that weekend, you get that win. You obviously, over the last month of the season, I don't remember all the wins, but the Iowa State win, obviously the first one in regular season play, was like one of the best games I watched all year. So I think the back half of the schedule justified it, but we also know this is a March sport, and I think more than a March sport, it's a tournament sport. And love it or hate it, but you are remembered and kind of defined by what you do in this tournament. So I think the back half of the season has justified, hey, this is a team that will be able to compete at the top part of the Big 12 going forward. But I also understand people that say, listen, you're remembered for what you do in March and April, and there's still work to be done here these next few weeks.
Aaron, great stuff. We always appreciate you joining us on the show. Real quick, how do BYU fans and college basketball fans find more of your work?
Yeah. The first of all, Fox Sports Radio, I'm kind of anchoring a lot of their coverage this week. It's been fun. I was on Selection Sunday, reacting to the bracket, all that stuff. So Fox Sports Radio, 600 affiliates nationwide. And then also, the Aaron Torres podcast, we're going live basically every day this time of year. As we get deeper into the tournament, but also into portal, we're not one of those shows that stops talking college basketball just because the season ends. And as you guys know from last year, some of the most exciting parts of the college basketball season are when the games are over and the real games begin in April and May. So, and I'll say this, listen, nobody is rushing to the finish line on this BYU season. I know you guys are going to savor, and the fan base is going to savor everything that comes these next few weeks. But I'll also say I think it's going to be really interesting to see, the kind of roster that BYU puts together around what we know is the #1 high school recruit in America. Who they get in the portal, who they pursue in the portal, and obviously, who comes back as well with a guy like Richie Saunders all of a sudden having a very interesting decision. So yeah, the Aaron Torres podcast, in addition to all your other BYU stuff, I guarantee with the roster that I know Coach Young and his staff are going to put together, we'll be talking about BYU basketball just like last year, probably into at least late April, maybe early May. Maybe mid-May, depending on how everything goes. But it's going to be a fun couple weeks for sure.
Fantastic. Aaron, good to talk to you again, man. Enjoy the NCAA tournament.
Thanks, Aaron.